It often begins with something small: a staircase, a jar lid, a moment of forgetfulness that feels slightly out of place. One afternoon, a patient once told me something that stayed with me. "I'm doing everything right," he said. "I eat clean, I exercise, my schedule is disciplined." And yet, when his blood tests returned, two numbers stood out like quiet red flags in an otherwise perfect report: vitamin D, vitamin B12, both far below what the body quietly needs to function well. Now, here is the surprising part. Research suggests this situation is no longer unusual. Studies indicate that nearly 42% of adults show some level of vitamin D deficiency, and more than half may carry suboptimal vitamin B12 levels. Not just seniors, not just those with poor diets, professionals, athletes, people who believe they are doing everything correctly. So what is happening? How can a body surrounded by food still experience nutritional silence? The answer begins with a realization that many scientists now discuss quietly. Modern life has changed the environment our biology evolved to depend on. For most of human history, sunlight touched the skin daily. Meals were eaten slowly. Fermented foods were common. Digestion moved like a steady fire. Today, the rhythm is different. We wake before the sun, but commute indoors. We sit behind tinted glass. Artificial light stretches long into the night. And slowly, almost invisibly, the body begins to lose access to signals it once relied on. It is a little like a plant placed inside a beautiful house. The soil may be rich, the pot may be perfect, but without sunlight, something subtle begins to fade. But this is where the story becomes fascinating, because the symptoms of these deficiencies rarely appear the way most people expect, and that's where the mystery deepens. If vitamin D and B12 deficiencies announced themselves loudly, they would be easy to recognize. But the body rarely works that way. Instead, these shortages often appear in subtle disguises, small sensations that drift into daily life and quietly stay there. A stiffness in the lower back when standing up from a chair, a faint clicking in the knees while climbing stairs, a strange heaviness in the muscles that makes movement feel just a little slower than before. Many people assume this is simply aging, but research suggests something more interesting may be happening beneath the surface. Vitamin D, for example, plays a surprising role in how muscle fibers activate and how the body regulates calcium. Scientists have observed that when levels drop, muscles can begin to feel weaker, almost like a dimmer switch slowly turning down strength. Have you ever noticed how some mornings your body feels steady and strong, while other days it feels oddly reluctant to move? That subtle difference may sometimes reflect deeper biochemical signals. Transition. Vitamin B12 tells a similar story, but inside the nervous system. This nutrient helps maintain the protective sheath around nerve fibers, a structure scientists call myelin. When B12 becomes scarce, nerve communication can begin to resemble a flickering electrical wire. Signals still travel, but not as clearly. That is why some people experience tingling in the hands, unusual irritability, or moments of brain fog that feel difficult to explain. It can feel as though thoughts are moving through a light morning mist. But here is the fascinating question. If someone is eating reasonably well and living a productive life, why would the body suddenly struggle to maintain these nutrients? Why would the numbers on a lab report quietly begin to fall? To answer that, we have to look beyond food itself and explore something even more fundamental: the body's ability to recognize and absorb what it receives. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Imagine for a moment that the human body is not simply a machine that runs on nutrients, but a living ecosystem that must recognize those nutrients before it can use them. This idea may sound unusual at first. After all, most of us have been taught a simple equation: eat healthy food, and the body receives healthy nutrition. But research increasingly suggests the equation is more complex. The body must detect, unlock, and transport nutrients before they can support cells. If any step in that chain becomes weak, the numbers on a blood test can quietly begin to fall. Have you ever wondered why two people can eat the same meal, yet experience very different levels of energy afterward? Scientists believe the answer often begins in the digestive system. Inside the stomach and small intestine, a remarkable series of biochemical signals determines whether nutrients are absorbed or simply pass through the body unused. For vitamin B12, one of the key players is something called intrinsic factor, a protein produced by specialized cells in the stomach. Without it, B12 cannot travel safely into the bloodstream. And here is where modern life introduces a subtle complication. Chronic stress, irregular meals, and heavy caffeine intake have been observed to influence stomach acid production. When stomach acidity weakens, food proteins may not break down efficiently. In other words, nutrients can remain locked inside the foods we eat. It's a little like receiving a beautifully wrapped gift, but never finding the key to open it. Meanwhile, another nutrient follows an entirely different pathway: vitamin D. Unlike most vitamins, this one does not come primarily from food at all. Instead, it begins with something far older and far more powerful: sunlight. And this is where the story begins to shift from the kitchen to the sky. For many years, vitamin D was described simply as a vitamin, but scientists today often refer to it in a very different way: a pro-hormone. In other words, once it enters the body, it behaves less like a simple nutrient and more like a biological messenger, one that influences muscles, bones, mood, and even immune signaling. That realization alone raises an interesting question. If vitamin D functions more like a hormone, where does the body actually get it? The surprising answer is not primarily from food. Research indicates that the largest portion of vitamin D begins its journey in the skin, triggered by a specific spectrum of sunlight known as UVB radiation. When this light touches the skin, something remarkable occurs. A cholesterol-derived compound inside skin cells transforms through a cascade of reactions, eventually becoming the active vitamin D the body can use. It is almost like a solar panel quietly embedded within human biology. For thousands of years, this process happened naturally. People worked outdoors, farmers, builders, travelers. Daily life unfolded beneath open skies. Sunlight arrived gently each morning, activating that internal solar chemistry. But modern life has gradually shifted that relationship. Have you noticed how much of the day now unfolds behind walls and windows? Glass, while bright and transparent to our eyes, blocks most of the UVB wavelengths required for vitamin D synthesis. So even when sunlight fills a room, the biological signal the skin expects may never arrive. Imagine standing near a warm fireplace, yet separated by a thick pane of glass. You can see the flames. You may even feel slightly warmer, yet the true heat never reaches you. And this is why researchers increasingly describe vitamin D deficiency not just as a nutritional problem, but as a lifestyle signal. Because the body still waits each day for a message from the sun. And interestingly, it expects that message in a very specific window of time. The human body, it turns out, keeps time in ways that are far more precise than most people realize. Inside the brain sits a tiny structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, often described by researchers as the body's master clock. Its job is to coordinate circadian rhythms, those daily cycles that guide sleep, hormones, metabolism, and even how nutrients are processed. And sunlight is its primary signal. But not all sunlight speaks to the body in the same way. Studies indicate that the skin synthesizes vitamin D most efficiently during a particular window of the morning, when the angle of the sun allows UVB wavelengths to reach the surface of the Earth more directly. For many regions, this occurs roughly between 8 and 11 in the morning. During this time, just 10 to 20 minutes of direct sunlight on the arms, legs, or back can trigger the skin's vitamin D pathway. Simple, quiet, natural. Yet many modern routines unfold in a completely different rhythm. Morning begins indoors, checking messages, answering emails, rushing through breakfast under artificial light. By the time people step outside, the day has already shifted forward. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to go from sunrise to afternoon without feeling the sun on your skin at all? The body, however, still expects that signal. Without it, vitamin D production remains like a silent orchestra waiting for its conductor. It's a little like planting seeds in fertile soil, but never opening the window to let sunlight reach them. But here is another fascinating layer scientists have discovered. Even when vitamin D is created in the body, it still needs help traveling where it is needed. Simple, quiet, natural. Vitamin D belongs to a group scientists call fat-soluble nutrients. This means it behaves very differently from vitamins that dissolve easily in water. Instead of moving freely through the bloodstream, vitamin D prefers to travel alongside lipids, small molecules of dietary fat that act almost like biological transport vehicles. Without them, its movement through the body can become inefficient. Researchers often compare this process to shipping cargo. Nutrients may be produced or consumed, but without the proper carriers, they struggle to reach the tissues that need them. Have you ever wondered why traditional cultures naturally paired sunlight exposure with meals containing healthy fats? Sesame seeds, soaked almonds, olives, clarified butter, and similar foods appeared frequently in traditional diets long before the biochemical explanation was understood. Today, scientists are beginning to recognize the quiet intelligence behind these combinations. Healthy fats help support the absorption and transport of fat-soluble compounds, including vitamin D, allowing the body to distribute them toward bones, muscles, and immune cells. In a way, fat acts like a fleet of small boats carrying nutrients across the bloodstream's river. Without those boats, the cargo simply waits at the shore. But the story of nutrient movement does not end in the bloodstream, because another vitamin, vitamin B12, follows a completely different and far more delicate pathway. Unlike vitamin D, B12 does not rely on sunlight. Instead, it relies on something far more sensitive, because of the health of the digestive system. And when that system becomes disrupted, the brain can begin to feel the consequences in ways that are both subtle and deeply surprising. If vitamin D supports the structure of the body, vitamin B12 often supports its electrical language. Every thought, every movement, every memory travels through networks of nerve fibers that carry tiny electrical signals. For those signals to move clearly, nerve cells rely on a protective coating known as myelin. Vitamin B12 plays an essential role in maintaining that insulation. When B12 levels remain stable, communication between brain and body flows smoothly, like messages traveling through well-protected wires. But when levels begin to fall, scientists have observed something intriguing. The signals do not stop immediately. They simply become less efficient. Have you ever experienced a faint tingling sensation in the fingers, or a strange heaviness in the head after long hours of work? Some researchers describe these early symptoms as signal leakage. The nerves are still communicating, but the clarity of the message begins to fade. This may explain why low B12 sometimes appears as brain fog, irritability, forgetfulness, or difficulty concentrating. The brain is still functioning, but the transmission is no longer perfectly crisp. It is a bit like listening to a radio station drifting slightly out of tune. The music is there, something about it feels distorted. Yet here is the fascinating part. Vitamin B12 deficiency rarely begins because the vitamin itself is absent from food. In many cases, the body simply struggles to absorb it. And this is where the story circles back to the digestive system, the quiet biochemical furnace that determines how much nourishment truly reaches the bloodstream. Ancient traditions sometimes referred to this internal process as digestive fire. Modern science, interestingly, is beginning to recognize something very similar, because digestion itself may hold the key to unlocking B12. Deep inside the stomach, digestion begins with a powerful chemical environment. Hydrochloric acid breaks apart food proteins, releasing nutrients that were previously locked within their structures. Enzymes follow, continuing the careful work of dismantling complex molecules into forms the body can absorb. For vitamin B12, this process is especially important. B12 in food is usually bound tightly to proteins. Only when stomach acid separates it can the vitamin attach to intrinsic factor, the specialized protein that escorts B12 safely into the small intestine for absorption. Without that escort, the vitamin simply passes through the digestive tract unnoticed. Researchers have observed that certain modern habits can gradually influence this process. Chronic stress, irregular eating patterns, and heavy reliance on stimulants like caffeine may affect stomach acid production. When acidity becomes too low, digestion loses some of its ability to unlock nutrients. In that moment, food may still be nutritious, yet the body receives only part of its potential value. Have you ever eaten a meal and still felt strangely unsatisfied, as though something inside the body had not quite completed its work? Scientists sometimes describe digestion as a metabolic furnace. When the flame burns steadily, nutrients transform into usable energy and cellular building blocks. But when the fire grows weak, even the best ingredients struggle to release their power. Interestingly, some of the most supportive allies for digestion are not supplements at all. They are foods that humans have been preparing for thousands of years, foods shaped by fermentation. And inside these foods lives an entire invisible ecosystem that may help restore the body's ability to process nutrients effectively. Inside the human digestive system lives a community so vast that scientists sometimes describe it as an internal ecosystem. Trillions of bacteria, fungi, and microscopic organisms form what researchers call the gut microbiome. Together, they influence digestion, immunity, and even certain aspects of mood and cognition. For vitamins like B12, this microbial community plays an especially interesting role. Some gut bacteria assist in processing and recycling nutrients, helping the body access compounds that might otherwise remain unused. When the microbiome is balanced, digestion often becomes more efficient. But when that ecosystem becomes disrupted through chronic stress, irregular meals, or highly processed diets, nutrient absorption can quietly decline. It is a little like tending a garden. Healthy soil allows plants to thrive, but when the soil loses its microbial richness, even strong seeds struggle to grow. Traditional cuisines around the world unknowingly nurtured this internal garden through fermented foods. Fresh yogurt, sauerkraut, beet kvass, fermented grains, and similar preparations introduced beneficial microbes that interacted with the gut environment. These foods were rarely viewed as supplements. They were simply part of everyday meals. Have you ever noticed how many traditional lunches include something lightly fermented or cultured? Researchers believe these foods may help support digestive enzymes and microbial diversity, two factors closely connected to nutrient metabolism. And this brings us to another fascinating observation. The body does not rely on food alone. Daily movements, posture, and subtle lifestyle rhythms can also influence digestion and circulation. Small habits, almost invisible in their simplicity, can quietly help nutrients move through the body more effectively. And these habits often begin immediately after a meal. After eating, most people return immediately to their desks, phones, or couches. Digestion, however, is a process that benefits from gentle cooperation. Researchers have observed that body posture can subtly influence how blood circulates toward the digestive organs after a meal. When the body remains upright and relaxed, circulation continues flowing toward the stomach and intestines, supporting enzymatic activity. Some traditional cultures preserved a simple habit, sitting in a kneeling position for a few minutes after eating. In yoga traditions, this posture is known as Vajrasana. Have you ever noticed how certain body positions seem to calm the stomach while others create pressure or discomfort? The explanation may lie in circulation and nerve signaling. Digestion relies heavily on the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes called the body's rest and restore network. Gentle posture, slow breathing, and relaxed spinal alignment appear to support this system's activity. The spine itself also plays a quiet role in nutrient communication. Nerve pathways extending from the spinal cord influence many organs, including parts of the digestive tract. When the spine remains mobile and flexible, these communication channels remain open. Think of the spine as a central highway through which information travels between brain and body. Another surprisingly simple practice involves something many children once did naturally: walking barefoot on grass or soil. Researchers studying grounding have explored how contact with the Earth's surface may influence circadian rhythms and electrical balance in the body. It is a small reminder that the human organism evolved in constant contact with nature. Yet, there is another piece to the puzzle. Certain modern habits can quietly drain nutrients faster than the body restores them. And understanding those habits can reveal why deficiencies persist even when we try to improve our health. Sometimes the most powerful changes in health come not from adding something new, but from recognizing what quietly interferes with the body's natural balance. Modern life offers many conveniences, yet some of them unintentionally disrupt the biological rhythms that once supported human nutrition. For example, researchers have observed that spending the majority of the day indoors, behind tinted windows and artificial lighting, can gradually weaken the body's relationship with natural sunlight. Without regular exposure, the skin receives fewer signals to begin the vitamin D pathway. At the same time, certain lifestyle patterns may influence nutrient absorption in more subtle ways. Highly caffeinated beverages, irregular meals, and frequent late-night eating can place strain on digestive timing. Scientists studying circadian metabolism have noticed that the body performs many of its repair processes during the early hours of night. When heavy meals appear late in the evening, those processes may shift or become less efficient. Another interesting factor involves medications designed to reduce stomach acidity. While these treatments are important in many medical situations, long-term use has been associated in some studies with reduced absorption of certain nutrients, including vitamin B12, because stomach acid plays a key role in releasing B12 from food proteins. But stepping back from all these details reveals a deeper and hopeful picture. The human body is remarkably adaptive. When sunlight returns to daily life, when digestion receives calm attention, when the gut ecosystem is nourished, biological systems often begin recalibrating themselves. Health, in many ways, behaves like a landscape. Sunlight provides the light, digestion provides the heat, fermented foods nourish the soil. And when those three elements move together in rhythm, something extraordinary happens. The body remembers how to thrive. But this raises one final question worth reflecting on. What small rhythm might your body be quietly waiting for today?